Local productions seen on Delta College Public Media are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Mike Redford, and this is the follow-up. Coming up on tonight's show, Michigan's presidential primary is happening a lot earlier. In fact, some of you may or may not know that the voting has already begun, the result of major changes in voter-approved election laws that call for 9 days of early voting. So what does it mean to you, the voter? What does it mean for county clerks who are doing their best to manage the election process amidst these major changes? And oh, by the way, there is an additional cost to taxpayers, that would be you, to implement these changes. Tonight, two county clerks working on the front lines of all this are joining us live in the studio. But first, we would like to hear from you to help drive the conversation here on the follow-up. You can do that in a variety of ways via social media on Facebook. You can email us, you can make a comment on YouTube, and you can dial into our follow-up hotline to voice your opinion or suggest future show topics. And if you'd like to watch any of our past shows this season, just log on to deltapublicmedia.org. Two special guests in studio. They've been on the program before. It's great to have you guys back. Vanessa Guerra, the Saginaw County Clerk, and Kathleen Vanotti, Bay County Clerk, also known as Katie Vanotti, so I might use both, okay?
Sure.
You guys getting any sleep lately at all?
Not much. No, I wake up in the night thinking about elections.
I'm sure you do. Well, a lot on your plate. So a lot of changes to our voting laws, the result of Proposal 2 being passed by the voters in 2022, as you know. We're going to show the viewers a graphic that's going to list kind of all the changes that you've had to deal with in a moment, but and get your reaction to some of those. But let's start with this 9 days of early voting. This is what people have been talking about. It started Saturday, over the weekend. There have been reports about 10,000 Michiganders have already voted, at least over the weekend. So how's it working in your county? Let's start with Bay County, I guess.
Good. We've had about over 200 voters that have voted early in Bay County so far. So the turnout is slow and steady. Our precinct is working well, but it has taken a lot of preparations to get it that way. We're happy with that. We have had no hiccups so far.
Good. And in Saginaw County?
Same, very similar. We've had about just over 150 voters since Saturday, and we've also been surprised that we haven't had any major issues. I think a lot of us were just very anxious. You know, we have a lot of faith in the state, but we've never done this before in the state ever. I mean, they ran a pilot program in November of last year, but for us it was the first time that we've implemented this, so we were very grateful that things have been going smoothly.
So it's not one size fits all. There are some counties, maybe some rural areas, possibly up north, that have multiple sites. Other counties have chosen to just do one site. In both of your cases, both Bay County and Saginaw County, you've each done one site. So can you walk us through kind of where your sites are and why the decision was made to just kind of do one site?
For us, our site is located in Bay City, which is our largest jurisdiction, but it's also surrounded by our largest townships too. And you know, that was an important decision that we thought about for a while, because Bay County, you know, our furthest jurisdiction from our county seat is about 40 minutes. So it is a drive for them, but we do have to remember that we are open 2 full weekends.
Sure.
We're open on the holiday. So I would hope that anyone who is maybe planning a trip to Home Depot or Menards to come into the city to do any of their chores can also just plan on voting those days too. So we did choose one site. I still think that that was the best decision for us. And who knows, maybe if early voting takes off in the next few years, we might expand it.
Once they get used to it. And I think what you were saying earlier, that the municipalities kind of agreed to say you guys take it as opposed to them taking it on, right? Why did they sort of back off and say, no, you guys can handle it, right?
Yeah. We were very fortunate. I mean, we have really good relationships with our local clerks, and we actually had to go out and meet with their local boards because it's the board that needed to approve an agreement that they would join with the county. And so in Saginaw County, we have 30 jurisdictions that gave us their approval and said that, yes, we trust that you can carry this out and give access to our voters. And so it was a labor of love, but we were able to work with all of them. And I think that they realized that doing it themselves would be a significant financial burden, particularly for our very small townships who just do not have the means to host 9 days and pay employees for 9 days and buy another set of tabulators. And so I think we're grateful, and we were also grateful because together we save money doing it.
Yeah, because I know both of you want to be fiscally responsible. I remember talking to both of you, I think right after the 22 proposal that passed, and maybe just prior to that, the one thing was like, okay, well, to implement all these changes, not just the 9 days of early voting, but the other changes you're going to see in a moment, there's a cost, right? And I don't know if you know what the cost is, but I think you're looking at that and going, well, we have to watch our costs. I assume the state has given you some money to implement, not only to do the early voting, but to hire a lot more election workers. So to walk us through that a little bit, how hard that's been.
Yeah, so when we were reaching out to our jurisdictions too to see if they would like to contract with us or do it on their own, we did a rough estimate that if everyone purchased their own equipment, ran their own sites, I estimated that would cost the Bay County just for one election $1.2 million. And also the cost to implement just our precinct, which we have been reimbursed by the state for some costs, is around $200,000. So we've saved $1 million by consolidating.
Okay, with a good reason. Yeah.
Yep, very similar. So we did the research to give our locals the best estimate that we could, and ours was just under around 2.5 million if all of them decided to do it on their own. But collectively, we could get it done for about $540,000. So
Wow.
a significant savings for the taxpayers.
Well, I'm glad we brought that up because it's great to implement these changes, and I think 60% of the voters in 2022 approved it, so the majority of Michiganders approved it.
Yes.
It was a way to kind of engage more people in the process, which are you seeing already, or can you take like a county clerk view to say that this is a good idea, that we've done this?
It expands the access to voting, absolutely.
Right.
I don't see any reason that someone who wants to vote cannot vote at this point. You can vote by mail, you can vote on election day, we're open for 13 hours still. And then also, again, 9 days of in-person precinct-style voting. I would hope that someone has some availability within 9 days, and if they don't, they can vote by mail. So
It'll be interesting to see as we get through this election year into November, right? It's a big election year, and see if the turnout numbers dramatically increase. Maybe it'll take some time, but there's really no excuse not to, so get out and vote. So we focus a lot on this 9 days of early voting. There are a lot more on that list that we implemented. For instance, you can see it here, there's both sides. Recognize fundamental right to vote without harassing conduct. So we'll start with that one. Do you have an experience with that? Are voters getting harassed? Are they getting problems as they're walking into precincts? Is this just another way of letting folks know this is not going to be tolerated? I mean, do you have an experience in that at all, either of you?
No, I mean, I do think in a way this was sort of doubling down on laws that are already in place to prevent voters from being intimidated or harassed by outside organizations. But I think in light of a lot of what we've seen in 2020, they felt compelled to ensure that this was included in the 2022 proposal. But I can say, at least in Saginaw County, we've been very fortunate. We haven't had incidences where people have reported any sort of misconduct as they're voting.
Okay, what about your election workers? Do they have to have a concern at all? I know you have security. I mean, if I'm going to sign up to be an election worker, I'm doing my civic duty to help you go along, and yet there are some voters, because of this divisive culture, may give them a hard time. Do you have an experience in that at all? Is that a concern for any of the folks that you recruit? I don't know.
Yeah, it is a concern for some people that I recruit. They do bring that up, and they say that they are nervous to work an election, or maybe they don't want to do it because I think that there is a group of people who are just angry at the process.
Right.
That has come up with my local clerks. At times, my election inspectors, I don't think we've had any incidents, but they've heard of places that have.
Sure. So by and large, they're not going to be hassled. It could, but so that brings up the issue: how have you been able to recruit more election workers? Has that been difficult? Do you have a core of not volunteers? You pay the election workers. Do you have a core of election workers that keep coming back time after time? How have you been able to recruit? What kind of people are you looking for? Are you still looking for people?
Yeah, always.
Okay.
Because even early voting for the August primary is going to take place at the end of July. I know I usually like to go on vacation during that time, so I'm sure my election workers
But
will
maybe
too.
not this year, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. So we're always recruiting. I sent a letter to as many retired teachers as I could get my hands on, county employees I could get my hands on, and we did a good job recruiting election inspectors to help us work.
Are they
over.
retarees? Who are these people
Yeah.
that you're getting?
There are a lot of retirees,
Yeah.
but it's a good mix of folks who maybe work part-time jobs, or they just see working as a precinct inspector a priority in their life. And I think, especially after 2020, we were nervous that we would have folks that no longer wanted to participate. But in 2022, we saw a lot of familiar faces, but we also had new faces that I think maybe were skeptical of the process.
Sure.
And so we took that as an opportunity to invite them in and say, come learn about how you are really the defenders of democracy, and our elections are only as strong as the people who operate them. And so if you have questions and you want to be assured that we're running safe and secure elections, then join us. And we saw those new faces, and they've been a great addition because they ask really good questions and they help us explain elections in a way that's more clear. I think we have always known that we're following all the steps that are required to secure our elections, but maybe we're not explaining it to the voters as well as we could.
Right.
And so I think they've provided us that opportunity.
Defenders of democracy. I kind of like that's a good. And if people are interested, they go to your specific websites to the
Yeah.
county
Yeah,
clerks,
sure.
right? Require military overseas ballots to be counted if postmarked by election day. I think that's sort of self-explanatory. Provide voter right to verify identity with photo ID or signed statement. How is that different? I think I remember a couple of years ago there was concerns that people were being able to vote without showing sort of valid IDs.
Sure.
Have we cleaned that up a little bit now, or?
So we had that requirement previously.
Okay.
Someone, if they were not in possession of their photo ID, they could sign an affidavit saying that they are who they are. This just codified it.
Into
Okay.
the Constitution.
Yep.
Okay, so that should clear that up a little bit. Let's move on to the next slide there, Bob. Provide voter right to single application to vote absentee in all elections. Is that new?
That is new, and that's a major change that I think gets overlooked. So if you were someone who received an application to vote absentee in this February election, you would have seen a new checkbox available to you that asked if you wanted to sign up for permanent automatic ballot list.
Okay.
And so in the past, every election cycle, you'd have an application sent to you, and then you turn that in, and then you get your ballot sent. Now, if you have checked off that box at some point this year, you will just have a ballot sent to you. You will no longer have to fill out an application prior to every absentee ballot that's sent to you, so long as you've previously completed an application.
Okay.
Yep.
That was a pretty good explanation.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what-
All right, this is the one I want to talk about too. Require state-funded absentee ballot drop boxes posted for absentee applications ballots. So I remember we talked about this a couple of years ago. There's a cost to that, but tell me what's involved and how many of these absentee ballot drop boxes do you have? Where do you put them? How's that working?
Honestly, in Bay County, we only had to add just a few of these state-funded drop boxes because we already had them.
Okay.
So Bay City is our largest jurisdiction because they're over 15,000 population. They had to add a second additional box. But they were able to find a city-owned property that they could put that at. I think maybe one of my townships didn't have a drop box that they had to add. So they're able to apply for it from the state, and they sent it right to them.
In Saginaw County, did you have them before?
Yes, we had them. I think maybe there was a couple townships that took an opportunity to buy the ones that are designed a little bit better than the old ones that they had,
Right.
and so which is a good thing because we want to make sure that people can't get into them who shouldn't have access to them. But
Right.
for the most part, it was already being done.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I mean, they have locked. You have to have somebody that has to unlock them.
Right.
You're not assigning security around these boxes.
Right. There
so-
is part of that was though that they'll have to have a camera station viewing the drop box, which again, lots of our locals were already doing this, but
Right.
now it's in law, and so we can ensure that that's being done.
I wonder how many people are actually using them, and maybe it's the kind of thing, we're just implementing these new changes. They know they're out there, and now they get used to it. I don't have to go to the county clerk's office to
Right.
put my
Right.
absentee. Once
Right.
they sort of get used to it, I guess. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we have significant voter turnout using absentee ballots. And so, and with early voting, the early in-person voting that we're going to get to, a lot of the studies show that states who have early in-person voting, ultimately it amounts that a third of your voters will vote on election day, a third will continue to vote by absentee ballot, and a third will choose to vote early in person.
Right.
And so I think it'll take a few election cycles for Michigan to get to that level,
Right.
but ultimately that's what we can expect to see.
And by the way, I'd have to let you know, you both have done a good job of getting information out. This is the Bay County voter info guide, but you have a smaller one like
Yep.
this, right, too?
Yep.
Got this from Saginaw County in my mail in Frankenmuth, and so you're doing a good job. No reason not to vote.
Yeah.
Provide that only election officials may conduct post-election audits. Walk me through that. What do I need to know about? Is that something new?
So a post-election audit is, I would say, the state, I guess, mandates or randomly chooses a select number of precincts that we have to audit. And we're really going through the county clerk's office with the local clerks, going through each step to make sure that they followed the proper procedures, and we use it as a training.
Okay.
If there was something that was missed, we can tell them and maybe, help them understand why they have to do that. So, no, we've always only had election officials do that.
Okay. All right, let's go to another one. We talked about the requiring 9 days of early in-person voting. Was there more to that we didn't get into at all, do you think? What else did we miss on the 9 days of early person voting?
I do think that one thing that's forgotten when you see that, so it doesn't currently encompass the Monday before Election Day.
Okay.
So if you plan to vote, it's going to be the second Saturday before Election Day through the Sunday before Election Day. And so if it's Monday, you're going to want to visit your local clerk to vote via absentee ballot until 4 p.m. Alternatively, you can wait until Tuesday to vote on Election Day.
So not having on that Monday, so the 26th, did they leave that open to give you guys a chance to
Yes.
kind of get ready for, is that what it
Yeah,
was for
so
the
it will
onslaught?
change ultimately in 2026. There will be, you can then hold it on that Monday, but until we really settled into this new process, they wanted an opportunity to give us a day before Election Day actually
Right.
started.
That's not your day off, right? You're not
No,
taking a break.
no, again.
I'm guessing not. Before I get to allow donations, that's more political, but I'll get into that in a second. And the last one is the require canvas, I've called it boards of canvas, okay, canvas boards, to certify election results based only on the official record of votes cast. Okay, I'm assuming that was already in place, but what am I missing here?
Right. That was, again, kind of doubling down on what's required in law. In some areas, though, there were concerns that Board of Canvasser members, it's 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans who serve on these boards throughout the county, who were refusing to certify the vote. Despite the records that were in front of them that had been attested by other bipartisan groups of election workers and bipartisan groups of clerks, they were refusing to certify the election. And so this says, no, you have a duty to certify the election based on the information that you're provided.
Also, I'm back to the harassment thing. I think the last election there were issues that people walking into the precincts couldn't do certain things, couldn't provide workers with water. You know what I'm talking about. Is that still an issue now at all?
I think sometimes the concern is that so candidates sometimes go and stand 100 feet away
Sure.
from a precinct, and if you have voters who are waiting in line, the candidate may think they're doing something good by going up to those voters and giving them bottles of water, going in and giving the precinct inspectors. But the reality is, if you are on the ballot, you need to remain 100 feet away, or if you're representing a political party.
Okay.
And so I think that was kind of the concern, and that happens, but again, the clerks and the election inspectors are trained to go out there and say, they go and they spray paint, we painted our lines to say, you cannot go beyond this line.
Okay. Allow donations to fund elections that must be disclosed. So in the past, they didn't have to, we could give thousands and thousands of dollars to a certain candidate. Walk me through that. Confused by that one.
Yeah, this has more to do with, so if you recall in, I believe it was 2020, Mark Zuckerberg had the Facebook dollars, or I jokingly call it, to give to election officials. And so this would make it so that if that opportunity occurred again, somebody, an organization could provide those dollars, but they of course need to be recorded. In Saginaw County, we did not accept any of those dollars. We believe firmly that elections should be publicly funded because there may be a time when there's an organization who, you know, leans the other way of me politically, and am I not going to take their dollars even though I took this other political sort
Sure.
of organization's dollars? And so but that does allow you to take the dollars, but we won't be doing that in Saginaw County.
I haven't had anyone offer
Okay.
since I've been in office, so.
Not yet, but your day might be coming. So overall, what's sort of been the impact of moving up this presidential primary to an early date of February 27th? Obviously, it gives you less time to prepare, but when you first heard about this and kind of looked at your calendar, how has this really impacted the process in your work overall?
Well, election, even though the election date is February 27th, we start months ahead. So, I mean, between Christmas and New Year's, I was finalizing our ballot order, and the work really started prior to Christmas. So moving that deadline up kind of really put more clerk work during that holiday season.
Okay. And training your workers earlier and getting them up to speed.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Same issue.
Okay. And by the way, I mean, that sort of was done because the Democratic-led legislature in the state wanted to move it up so Michigan could have been sort of a bigger player in this presidential nomination process as opposed to after Super Tuesday in March.
Right.
And it's doing that. I mean, we're ahead of South Carolina, some others, so we're a bigger player, which will be interesting see how that plays out. Speaking of results, now that you're implementing all these changes, you're getting a lot more people voting. You're getting people voting early, 9 days early. So what happens with the sort of the counting process? What kind of expectation do we have to get results? In the media, they're always going, well, I'll have by midnight, by the 11 o'clock news. That's not going to happen anymore. So tell me about the counting process and what's changed on that. You're going to probably have a lot more. What are your thoughts on that?
So we won't, even though we have early in-person voting that's happening, we won't have results any earlier. And so the individuals who are working the early in-person voting site will have to have members of the two parties come back after 8 p.m. on election day to actually close the polls of that early vote center. And so they'll come in and they'll close the polls just the same as what's happening across our election day precincts that are also closing the polls at 8 p.m. And so I don't expect it to be any faster. We have our results brought in manually, so our local clerks actually drive them into the county to be uploaded. And so that can take a long time for people who live out in Brant or Marion Township. And so I would not expect them to be done quickly, but this shouldn't be a race, right? We want accuracy. We don't want anything to be done incorrectly, and so people should be patient and prepared to make sure that they have accurate results.
How are you feeling about it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, 9 days of early in-person voting, to me, I look at as 9 additional precincts. It's 9 days of information to sort through on election day to make sure that it makes sense before we post our results. And we still do wait around for our jurisdictions who are further away from the county seat to physically drive in those results before we can post them. And with the addition of early voting, I don't see that happening any sooner than we used to post them.
What's the process in terms of when you can count? So you have 9 days of early voting, but you can't begin voting right.
Yeah.
You can't begin counting.
We don't know who won.
Right.
We don't know who's
won't
winning.
tabulate results
Right.
until after 8 p.m. election day.
Okay, no
so
matter
February
what.
27th in
Yes.
this case.
So you guys are both sort of in your first terms, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
you're both running in the August primary, and your selected counties, Saginaw and Bay, and then the big general election in November. When you think about what you got into, careful what you get into, right? So how has it been for you? I'll start with you. Something you got into it, 3-4 years ago, and now it's changed so much. Where are you with that?
It's changed so much since I've taken office. We have just been implementing changes the entire time. I'm not afraid of working. It's been fun to have a hand in implementing this early voting. This is a historic change that will forever change how we vote in Michigan. And I'm proud of the work that we've done in Bay County. But no, I will also say it has been a lot of work within the last few years.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, we are running for office this year too. So
Right.
it is a lot to juggle.
Yeah. And Vanessa, staying with you, you were kind of a state rep before you kind of came on. So walk us through your process this last couple of years.
Yeah. It's been a learning curve, certainly, because of all the changes. in Saginaw County, we had the opportunity to participate in the drafting of the legislation, the implemented proposal to, because of my experience serving the legislature, I still had those connections and that insight, and so that did in some ways give us a little bit of a leg up in better understanding the law more quickly, because we were able to be very involved in its drafting. But you know, same as Katie, it's a lot, but we made a commitment to the voters, and frankly, a lot of times I think more about our local clerks, because for both of us, this is a full-time job. For our local clerks, who are the boots on the ground in their community, a lot of them, this is not their full-time job. It's part-time. It's really a job that ultimately results in a full-time job that they do after their full-time job.
Sure.
And so very grateful for the commitment that they've made to the voters and ensuring that you know, every voter in every jurisdiction it feels safe and knows that their ballots are safe and secure.
Right, and Katie, I think we talked about this beforehand. In addition to elections, you've got a few other things on your plate as a clerk, like for instance.
Yeah, for instance, I think Vanessa also managed the clerk of the circuit court. So there are a lot of changes in terms of automatic expungements, extreme protection orders. So though these are legislative changes that affect our office. So even though elections is probably the most relevant and large thing that we're doing right now, those are also giant changes that we have to make sure are properly implemented in our office.
Got about a minute and a half. Any last words that we should leave our viewers with as they get into this voting cycle?
No, just go vote right now, tomorrow. There's no
Right.
reason not to.
Right.
And you can now bring your absentee ballot to the polls if you'd like. Encourage voters, if they have it at home, they should do that, but remember to leave the stub attached to that ballot, because
Okay.
you will need that when you, if you choose to vote your absentee ballot.
And have you seen a lot more absentee voting? Have you seen, has it been dramatic?
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
it has
Right.
been.
Yeah.
Yep.
We'll see how that works. I know they say one of the parties is better at that than the other party. I'm not going to get into that, but I think at the end of the day, like you said, I think it's going to engage a lot more folks once they get used to it a little bit more.
Right.
And certainly this is a big presidential election year, and you guys are running for office, so get more people in the process, and it'd be interesting to see how turnout is. And
Right.
That's
Yes.
what we're looking for. Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming in. Try to get some sleep tonight. You've got some busy days ahead.
Yeah.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
And that's our show for tonight, but be sure to join us again on Tuesday, March 12th for the follow-up as we take a little break for our March Pledge Drive. Hope you can support that drive and everything else we do here on QTV. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on March 12th. Have a great night. Okay.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And make sure to click that bell icon to stay notified when we upload new content. Videos like this are only possible because of viewers like you. To help support this channel, click on the link in the description below. We'll see you next time.